Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of The Stacks. The Stacks on Film, The Stacks on TV Film, and The Stacks on Long Film TV Documentary. We're taking on one of the more revered filmmakers this time, and that is Mick Jackson. Mick Jackson, famous for the film Threads, notably not actually credited to him on the poster or in conversation, and also, I suppose, famous for Volcano, The Bodyguard, and LA Story, which are somewhat notable films. Also, the man's made 22 arguable motion pictures, though many of those are actually TV series, and most of those are TV films. In fact, the only real award he won was for a TV film, the TV Film Awards. We'll get to that later. So, Mick Jackson is an interesting filmmaker. He was born near where I was born, and that's all I will say without doxing either of us. I looked up on Google Maps yesterday. It was a 25-minute drive from the hospital I was born in to the area that he was born in. I don't know what hospital he was born in. If I could have looked into it more, I would have looked into it more. But you know what? I didn't prioritise that, I guess. I'm sorry. Many of his films are hard to find and watch. Some involve you having to get your friend in America to buy a DVD of one of them, which did happen. So there you go. If you want to watch Double Image, also called Double Agent, I'm not quite sure, then that's the way to watch that. Now, Jack has seen one Mick Jackson film, that is the film Threads, and we're going to follow the thread via Threads, exploring the two eras of the Mick Jackson career, which are going to split into two distinct time zones. I'm Stephen, by the way. Jack is here. Hi, Jack.
I'm Jack. I've seen one
More
Mick
like
Jackson.
Mick Jackson.
I'm the Jack of the Mick Jackson here. I've
Yeah.
seen one of
Steve
his
Jackson.
movies, and I thought, you know what, that'll do for me for now.
Yeah. So, to make things easier, here's how we're going to do the episode. We're going to talk about Threads as the pivotal point, and then follow the threads towards it and follow the threads after it. So we're going to split it into two distinct categories. And I've got two names for each time zone. So there's PT, pre-threads,
and
then PT, post-threads.
I knew it.
So we're going to go for PT and PT. So we're going to start with T, and then go PT, and then go PT.
Okay.
And at some point I'll mention the video game PT, one of my favourite games of ever. Real absolute classic. So we're going to start with Barry Hines's Threads.
Barry Hines?
Yes, if you look at the posters or anything with Threads, so Threads is a TV movie from literally 1984, and it is credited primarily to Barry Hines.
Right.
Now, what I'll point out is because TV is mostly seen as a writer's medium or maybe a producer's medium, but in conversation, it's seen as the writers run the show there. So unsurprisingly, Barry Hines, the scriptwriter, is who gets the credit on this.
bill.
However, I'd also note that Barry Hines is the more notable figure.
Right.
Here. Barry Hines, if you look up his wider writing, but most notably wrote Kes, and that is what they are banking on here.
Gotcha.
The writing with Ken Loach. He did at least another Ken Loach film, maybe some more, but I think he only did the two. But very notably wrote the screenplay for Kes, which is an absolute classic, and is very much within the wheelhouse of the kind of working class, life is grim existence that Threads is trying to convey.
Yeah.
And the idea of the north of England as well. So Threads is set in Sheffield.
Yeah.
Now, all of this started from me wanting to watch the film Threads. I remember years and years ago, I was talking to my friend Joe Riley about what films were the scariest films. And he said the scariest film he'd ever seen was a film called Threads. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And he described it as this TV movie from the 80s. It's just absolutely terrifying. Nuclear war, brutal. And since that point, wanted to watch it. Interestingly, on Letterboxd.com, though I would say this is not Mick Jackson's most famous film, I'd say The Bodyguard is, because we know what that film is. Threads is his most watched film on Letterboxd, which tells you a lot about the Letterboxd audience. Apparently it's not a big The Bodyguard crowd.
I think the reputation of Threads is more alluring than Bodyguard, I'd say, for the demographics that use Letterboxd.
Yes, people that watch and like The Bodyguard don't necessarily have Letterboxd. Those that watch and like Threads probably do have Letterboxd. And my aunt, one of my aunts, was who I remember first hearing about The Bodyguard from, and I don't think she has a Letterboxd account.
We can check that.
Okay. Hi, Auntie Paula. Hi. She's from the Essex side of the family, which is the link back to Mick Jackson. Follow the threads.
Follow the threads.
So, what did you think of the only Mick Jackson film you've seen, Threads?
It's my least favourite of the ones I've seen, but it's also my favourite Mick Jackson
Interesting.
movie.
It's not my least favourite.
Okay, interesting. This is a
movie
that's been on my radar for a very long time. You look up lists of quote scary movies or sort of trauma.
And you're like, there's a Wayans Brothers movie here, there's another Wayans Brothers movie here, Threads is here for some reason.
But yeah, most sort of like disturbing movies, you know.
Yes.
And I've always seen like the poster or the cover photo of, you know, sort of this police officer in bandages, and I think maybe
I wish that was the poster. It's such a great image.
It's a great image, and I knew it was British, and I knew it was a TV movie, but other than that, I never really got round to it. And then it was on Tubi. I sat down with it last week and had a terrifying 2 hours, really.
Yeah, absolute banger, innit?
It's really good.
To be said on the thing is one of these podcasts, absolute banger.
Absolute
Threads
banger.
is really fantastic.
It's very good.
And though it's not really a direction first movie, it clearly has a style which we'll contextualize later, because I think there is actually some worth in seeing parts of Mick Jackson's career and how they do feed into Threads. This is very much a nuclear bomb hasn't dropped yet, so we can't make a documentary on one. So let's make up the documentary of that. And the documentarian parts of it I think are really, really good. You've got the kind of like very cold voiceover text on screen stuff, which is really cool. You have that idea at the beginning which conceptualizes the title of there are threads, thin threads that hold society together, and it's webbed out and webbed out. I didn't know what threads meant. I had no idea actually. I saw that guy wearing the bandage and I thought it was like, threads, like the threads of a bandage.
That's what I went to as well.
Didn't realise it's the threads of society and when they tear apart. And I think why the film is absolutely excellent, and full disclosure, another reason why I watched it is why I'm maybe watching it is because of Oppenheimer. The atomic bomb movie is back in vogue, dare I say, and this is like a very notable one, and where Oppenheimer doesn't focus on, because it's a different film, the impact of a nuclear bomb. This is entirely about that. Though it's in two halves, so there is pre-bomb and post-bomb.
PB. God damn.
PB. So the pre-bomb stuff is really very good and is very Barry Hines. It is very much your cares. Here are some characters. They're not likable characters. They're not unlikable characters. They are salt of the earth Sheffield folk.
Yeah.
And I think it does just enough to ground you amongst people, not to... It's not manipulative. It doesn't go out of its way to make like relationship bonds, etc., etc.
It doesn't get in the weeds of everyone, and like you don't have main characters. You just get a feel for the culture and the community around this time.
Completely. I know that I've spoken with Vaughan about this before, of the idea of, and it's not a unique idea to me, of this point where there are films about loss. They have to make the character to be extra special, make that loss meaningful in a way that's deeply manipulative.
Yes.
And this is not that. The only lightly manipulative bit is the foreshadowing of a child, but they do make good on that in an interesting way, even if that's the most unrealistic part of the film.
Sure.
When just a child is birthed, and I'm like, it's very hard to just birth a child by yourself in a non-nuclear wasteland.
Nuclear fallout,
in Sheffield in general, I'll be honest. And it's even harder when Sheffield's been hit by something. I actually very much like Sheffield.
Sheffield's lovely.
I do. That's the first half of Threads. Really good, well written, well captured, solid stuff. Second half, Jack.
Ooh, grimdark, dystopian wasteland. Just very sobering and terrifying landscape, and just the inside the office pulling the strings, trying to work out how to fix things and how to make a livable world. And it's
a livable world for some is very much the point, isn't it? It's just how does it become authoritarian? It is this really interesting look at what would happen next.
Yeah, it's process, isn't it?
Another reason why it's brilliant is because it is very much a looking at the government of the time. So looking at 80s conservatism and being like, how would the ideology of this country, of this government, deal with this? So it becomes kind of like critique of that era of the Conservative Party as well.
Absolutely.
And by focusing on the North, very much places itself in that. So you've got the communities, the working class communities, the more industrialised communities that were very much completely decimated and attacked by that premiership. And when you've got people talking in that kind of like Jonathan Swift, a modest problem,
modest proposal,
the idea of being like, well, if people starve, that's fewer people to deal with, that's better. It gets into that stuff in a way that is chilling and realist, and towards the end of the baby stuff, there's a bit of like Children of Men stuff there as well.
Yeah, that's very
so
true.
there you go. I wonder if Coron has seen this.
Interesting.
It's great. So, on our ranking then, for those who do not have the video, I have put out all the movies in quotes from Mick Jackson, and we'll start with T, then we'll go PT and then PT, and our 5 categories. At the bottom is dross, above that is bad, in the middle is good for a Mick Jackson film, above that is decent, and above that is you should actually watch this.
We know this is an incredibly niche topic, and not a lot of people are going to be sorting off to watch Mick Jackson movies.
Hence why I'm presuming that no one has seen any of these after this point.
But if you do watch any of the movies, it's the ones we're going to top. I say we. Stephen's going to put in the top bracket. I'm going to put one of those.
No.
Oh wait,
no, Jack. This is how it works. I don't have any say over where they go.
Oh, what? I didn't know this. Okay, very interesting.
I only describe, and you place based on my description.
Okay. Well, I'm learning the gimmick as we go. So threads.
Threads. Where are you going to put threads, Jack?
You should actually watch this. It's as advertised.
Yeah,
it does what it says on the tin.
Absolutely fantastic.
It has a reputation for a reason, and I think even in 2023, still a chilling piece of drama. Oh,
yeah, really, really good. So.
Right. So how did you attack Mick Jackson's filmography outside of threads? Did you go chronologically, or was it just as
no?
when
I went to what
stuff?
did I have access to.
Yeah.
But now we will go chronologically.
Okay.
And we're going to start with the first credited work of Mick Jackson. This is a co-direction alongside others. Who else have we got here? We've got David Kennard, Adrian Malone, who don't really have other credits. I have some, but not. They are more niche than Mick Jackson.
More niche than legendary director
we've got
Mick
Jackson. So this is the 1973 several-part documentary series, The Ascent of Man, or Jay Bronowski's The Ascent of Man, or as the poster looks like, Of the Ascent of Man, because it's got a sun right next to the.
Oh, The Ascent of Man.
Oh, The Ascent of Man. What do you know about The Ascent of Man, huh?
What do I want to know about it? What is so? How long is it?
It's about 11 hours.
Okay. How much Mick Jackson involvement is there, really? Is it an episode?
I'm going to say very little. So this is all on BBC iPlayer, which is kind of cool that you can watch it there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
This is a quite a legendary TV series because this is, I want to say, this was towards the beginning of BBC Two.
You can say that. You can absolutely say that. I should probably validate that, but yeah, I'll have a look. I'll look that up. So what year was this? 74?
73.
73. When did BBC Two launch? That would be 1964. So like 10 years in.
So towards the beginning.
Towards the beginning in the grander sense of time. Celebrating the decade launch.
I'm such an expert. So yeah, The Ascent of BBC Two. So this is a long-form history show which tracks, as specified, the ascent of man. What that means is the complete history of mankind up until the year 1973, obviously, because that's as far as history had gone at that point.
Sure.
And in that way, I think it's therefore very worthwhile. These are long monologues, and they are unscripted per se. They are like heavily note-based, clearly, but this is I think he's like a social philosopher, scientist. So Jay Bronowski, or Bronowski, apologies, who just speaks at you for 11 hours about the entire history of mankind.
Jeez, wow. So it's like
which sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
Until you realise that 11 hours is not really much to cover the entire history of mankind.
Well, that's to say, it feels like a condensed, like abridged audiobook or something.
Yeah, I don't think it's amazing. I think this is a revered TV show, and I get for a reason, because it's an exhaustive work, and this is the time of... Here's this huge undertaking, really informative. It is really interesting, but it's also very 70s history. It is very much here is the linear ascent of history, and for me, it's very much cementing of the histories we already know, which I would argue is an act of further marginalising other histories.
Other stories, other histories, other perspectives in this world. But for a 70s British audience, it probably, doesn't strand too far from home truths.
I think it's good, and I think the thing that's worthwhile about it is everything you cover in it is kind of stuff that you know, but it's stuff that you know vaguely.
Yeah, it's
so
like
it furnishes
it's like a
you with the specifics.
It's like
you're like, oh yeah, I know about jeans. I guess I don't really know about jeans. And then it explains, the
Denim.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know a bit about Napoleon. I guess I don't know that much about Napoleon. So
that's what Ridley
blah,
Scott's
blah, blah.
hoping as well.
Yeah.
So would you say
I find him a little bit annoying.
Who, Ridley Scott?
Ridley Scott, yeah. Jay Aronofsky, he just speaks at you for 11 hours. And it's not as good as the other person that Mick Jackson works with. It does feel very much being spoken to. It doesn't feel like there's much space for the audience. And the rambling unscriptedness of it does get a bit self-indulgent. It's fine.
Would you say it's decent, good for a Mick Jackson film, bad, or dross?
That's up to you.
It sounds to me, I mean, I've only seen threads so far, and I'm only going to have seen threads for the entire thing, but for a television series chronicling the entire existence of man, I'm going to say that you've sold it to me as good for a Mick Jackson film. It's fine.
/ TV series.
/ TV series chronicling the history of man. I'm putting that in the middle bracket. Good for a Mick Jackson film television special series.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Next up, we have the television show Connections, which is kind of a chronicling of the history of man. Where one person talks at you for a long time, only 500 minutes this time.
Oh, thank God!
And it goes through the kind of like the history of mankind.
Okay, so nothing more to add to that. Very similar series?
No, it's actually it's not that similar actually. So this is actually really proto-thread stuff. So it's called Connections, and James Burke is our person centre, interdisciplinarian, but like science historian. Really cool guy actually. I like his presentational style. It's a lot of just like spiking the lens and like inviting question. The first episode is awesome. It uses the second person so well. It pretty much like presents the modern day, that being 1978.
I knew it well.
It makes the threads argument of we live in a world that is held together by so many systems, and what would happen if they all failed? And it's really cool. It says about how you go in a death trap every day, like an elevator, and it goes, this elevator is like a death trap waiting to happen. And the argument it makes is we live in a world where no one knows how anything works anymore. So there is this kind of like scarcity of actual functional knowledge. So if we didn't have power, so it goes, will this happen? Then what did this happen? He tracks it back to what would you do if power went? And he talks about this time when power did go. And he goes, well, you need to farm to food, but most farm materials are mechanized now. So you need to get a plow, blah, blah, blah. What'd that do? What would that mean? What would that mean? What would that mean? It's a really cool opening. And he groups back to it at the end. The last episode is really cool as well. It talks about like where it's going. And I think why it's awesome is because this argument in 1978 is so different to today of the whole internet of things and the internet of things being a thing in itself. So that connections, that threads argument is very persuasive. Then what it is very much a bunch of episodes of mapping how did we get to here, so it does the work for you, being like, okay, we know what this is, let's go back to the furthest point, and this invention to this invention to this invention. So from this seemingly unconnected event in the past, we get the lift in the future. It's cool.
The domino effect of history through technology there.
Yeah, but it's got sort of an alternative view of change. I don't know how much alternative it really is, because I think that this is more of a modern way of thinking, perhaps, but it is cool and I like it. So, that is Connections, the Mick Jackson TV series. Quite threadsy.
Sounds good for a Mick Jackson film to me. I mean, I'd definitely be interested in some of that, yeah.
Are you going to rank that within its tier?
You know what? I might do that towards the end.
Okay, yeah, we'll check them up. Next we have a Mick Jackson film. Now this is co-directed with Bill Persky, and this is called How to Pick Up Girls.
Oh, I can see the poster. She's a girl.
It's a good poster, get it? A girl's being picked up.
Very good. Doesn't sound great from the start.
No, it doesn't sound great, and you'll be surprised to see that Stephen Gillespie on Letterboxd.com has a 3-star rating for this film. It doesn't look like a 3-star kind of Stephen movie, and it starts with a joke that is a joke towards the beginning, which is definitely something phobic in some gender way.
Oh, no.
There's a bit towards the beginning of, I don't want to ascribe onto something, but there is an intolerance at someone that is presenting as a certain gender is described as being a different gender.
Gotcha.
So there's that at the beginning, and you have to get over that. And then it's the joke of the film is this dude who wants to pick up girls and can't really, and his roommate seems to be good at it. So in a very sex lies and videotape kind of way, what he decides is to interview women about what they actually want. And the idea there is, actually, if you talk to women and if you let them say things, and if you show interest, they become interested in you. So there's that sexualized videotape of here are women talking about what they actually want, which is actually pretty decently portrayed. It's not amazingly portrayed, but half decent. But in the background, there's this kind of like will they, won't they relationship. He strikes up with this woman that he meets. I think she's out walking a dog or something, and they live nearby each other. And they just have this kind of like nice... She playfully insults him a lot because he's a bit of an idiot. This thing going on, and it's a bit Woody Allen-y without Woody Allen, in that sense of here's this like just kind of like doofus who's kind of endearing for being a doofus. That's like he's a photographer. Surprisingly not like funny, but fun. And
charming,
surprisingly pleasant.
Okay.
I was after being like at the beginning, oh no,
it's a bit of an oof.
I was like, oh, actually, I really quite like this.
That sounds to
that's
me
how to pick up girls.
kind of decent, not just good for a Mick Jackson film. Maybe decent.
Yeah.
Depends on our definition of decent here, but I'd say decent.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I'm not saying you should actually watch it.
No, or else it would be in the top category.
No,
Wouldn't it? So
you shouldn't actually watch it, but I would agree that it's decent.
okay, cool.
The next film we have is a 32-minute short made, I think, for the BBC. This is pre-Threads, and it's called A Guide to Armageddon, and it's a public service video.
Cool.
This is Threads before Threads, so this is the actual documentary that he then turns into a fictive work for Threads. This should only be taken in the context of... When you were at school, did you study the Cold War?
No.
Okay, well, it was my favourite thing that I studied at school. In history. Not in every subject, of course. We did
French.
Did sport, for example.
I love to study the sports.
Love to study sport.
Spuddy stort.
I love to see. I'm a massive jock. I don't know what studying is.
Mick Jackson over here.
I really thank you. I really remember watching the Duck and Cover videos.
Okay, right, yeah.
In school, and that's been there being like, I can't believe people believe this, which is the easy thing to think as a child, being like, oh, look at this. I'm like, even a sheet can protect you from a nuclear blast. You're like, oh, no, it can't, you idiots. And it's... So I also watched, I forget if it's Where the Wind Blows or When the Wind Blows.
The animated...
that guy that did the Snowman
yes.
adaptation of his graphic novel, which I think works better in graphic novel form than it does in animated into a film form. And they are both very much about how public information at the time was completely misleading.
Okay.
But that's because it's kind of purposely misleading, because the real answer is, what can you do when the nuclear bomb drops? Nothing.
It's like this false security, a false sense of security. Like there are some measures in place for you to not be absolutely eviscerated. But
so yeah, A Guide to Armageddon takes you through all the things that are in place. So this shelter, here's what actually would happen, here's what you do, here's how much it would cost. And it's not Sheffield. It says, okay, the bomb drops here in London, high priority target, here's what happens, here's who gets killed, here's what happens to them. It's really hard watching, obviously. It's interviews of people, and you could argue what's the point of this fatalism. I would say it has the same point that Threads does, of the only argument against nuclear weapons is to confront their reality, and therefore be like, therefore we just can't. And I think, yes, the idea that you can do nothing is very, very true, but that actually encourages an attitude around nuclear weapons which is deeply unsafe. So this content that's just like, there is nothing you can do, fosters powerful anti-nuclear sentiment and is very, very worthwhile. So yeah, A Guide to Armageddon, you can watch it on YouTube, 32 minutes long, decent public service announcement that actually engages with what would happen in a nuclear war.
I am putting that in the you should actually watch this category, because that sounds good, as like a precursor to Threads, a movie that is also in the you should actually watch this category.
You should actually watch that.
At 32 minutes, I will actually watch that.
The Real Thing, a Mick Jackson directed documentary series starring James Burke, who is someone else I really like. James Burke. This stuff's really cool. It's 6 shows together. So it comes out at 3 hours. They're half an hour eps, and it is just pop science philosophy stuff.
Okay.
Of here's a history. So the first episode is awesome. It's filmed as a Raymond Chandler pastiche, where there's this like Marlowe, the detective, talks about he's just in this room talking about how his senses show him stuff. He's like, I was blindfolded, but I could feel the grass under me. And then, ow, I was burnt suddenly. And it's got this fun hard-boiled noir thing. And then it pulls back and it shows that's not grass under him. That's something else that feels like grass. And that wasn't him being burnt. That's an ice cube. And the idea being, if your senses are locked off, what your brain does is it fills in the gaps and it makes guesses. And therefore your senses are fooling you. And then it's like him being like, I could see the guy out there. There was his gun pointing out. Because no, actually, this was these items collected from casting a shadow, but because your brain is looking for a thing, it makes you see that. There's some forced perspective stuff where it tricks your brain into being like, you can see me. No, you can't. Look as I walk, blah, blah. It's a really cool kind of construct to go around. Not all the episodes are as good. That one at the beginning is really fun. As a let's find some cool stuff about science and perception and kind of like the metaphysics, like light metaphysics stuff.
Sure.
I think it's pretty cool. It's probably my favourite of the TV documentary Mick Jackson stuff. So yeah, real thing. It's a real thing. Hard to find.
Good for a Mick Jackson film if you can find it.
Yeah. That's the real thing. Next up, we have Threads, which you should actually watch.
Yep. Tick.
So, now we're in the post-Threads world.
PT.
Now, a film I watched yesterday, Double Image. Don't be fooled by the poster that calls it Double Agent. I don't know what this is actually called. Not a clue. This is the true story of a KGB agent, in quotes, called Yuri Nasenko, in quotes, who claimed to be a top KGB operative who approached a CIA operative and said, I want to inform, have me as an informer.
Okay.
And then later said, I want to defect to the West, take me to the West. And we follow Tommy Lee Jones, who is the star of this. He would be in another Mick Jackson film later. It's kind of cool. So we've got Tommy Lee Jones. Actually, I'll mention this now because I forget later. One actor that kept showing up in these films, though not in this one, John Carroll Lynch is in a lot of Mick Jackson stuff.
That's really
cool. And I really
cool.
like John Carroll Lynch, and it's just nice to see him just turn up
Just
a
pop
bunch.
up in stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's cool. This is classic Cold War intrigue. The basic thing is they don't think he's actually an informant. They think that he is a plant.
Yeah,
the FBI believe he's an informant, CIA don't, and the FBI's informant believes he's an informant, and the CIA say that's because we don't believe your informant is an informant. And if we prove that this informant isn't, there's a really good bit. So their informant's called Fedora, because it's all there's a fun scene where it's like he talks about this guy called Fedora and he goes, and by the way, I didn't tell you any of that. That's above your like classification status, and it's like it's a bunch of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they later pretty much just imprison and kidnap this Yushchenko guy and do torture him. And they get him to recant a bunch of his lies. And one of the lies is, I didn't actually have that rank. And then they go to the FBI and they're like, well, why would we care? We don't care if he's not this rank. And they go, well, you should care because your guy backs up General blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That guy doesn't exist. So why would he do that? The story complicates because the JFK assassination happens.
Spoilers.
And a certain person who was accused of assassinating JFK was linked to the KGB. Ooh. So therefore, the way that he ultimately gets to defect is he's just like, I'm going to tell you about Lee Harvey Oswald. We want to know about him. And then the plot is basically, we'll never know the truth going on here. And that's really frustrating.
Okay.
It gets too wedded to the Tommy Lee Jones perspective, which is ultimately not that interesting, and we don't really get under his skin. He's just like the guide there through. And I think, therefore, it gets wedded to, oh, America, you should be great, but you're going shadowy ways, and there is hope for us. Whereas it more should be, everyone here is lying to everybody, and this is a mess.
Yeah.
It doesn't resolve, because there's no story to resolve, because there's no actual ending.
Finale,
and it says that at the beginning. But that doesn't make it satisfying filmmaking.
Sure.
And my point would be, because the filmmaking doesn't use the narrative to be like, it's not like Tinker Tailor where it doesn't matter, the plot doesn't wrap up. It matters because the atmosphere is so amazing and it's used for themes the whole way through. This is just like, here's a bit of plot boiler and we're out of plot. The end.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so there's stuff in there. There's some interesting stuff going on, but altogether doesn't quite come together as much as you'd like it. Is this bad or is this good for a Mick Jackson film, though? Oof.
That's up to you. That's how I've described it. I know where I would put it.
You've described it as kind of. I'm going to put it in good for a Mick Jackson film for now, but then comparatively, I may move things later.
I'm not going to say I would agree, but I'd agree. So next we'll go to the Jeff Goldblum starring vehicle, which is a film that's called Life Story, but it may also be called The Race for the Double Helix.
Yes,
don't really know. So this is the story of the discovering the structure of DNA, of the story told at that point. So Watson and Crick. Now, the problem with this film is we now know this to be pretty much bunkum of the story presented in it, and the perspectives presented in it are not in line with the modern understanding of actually how things worked and what really happened here. So it's not really of any educational worth at all. And it's also shit. So Jeff Goldblum is fun in the first scene until you realise that he's playing a real person and he's just a creep. And he's just this Lothario and deeply unappealing. So it's a whole bunch of stuff that's made up. It's very lads clubby. Yeah. It has a bit of sympathy for the actually very important woman who is a part of this. But then not really, because it just doesn't really tell a story that actually should be the case. It's boring. It's crappy. It's shitty. It's a bad TV movie.
Dross. It's going in the Dross
category
for me. That does not sound like anything I would ever... Yeah, no thank you.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Yeah. And next we have A Very British Coup.
Ooh, this one looked very interesting.
From 1988. I have this as 5 stars on letterboxd.com. I absolutely adored this. This is a TV series, and this feels like classic TV stuff. I think why it really resonated with me is because it's just... If you have the political interests that I do, and very specifically, you will get so much out of this.
Okay.
The premise is in the 1990s. I think it's like set slightly in the future as of recording.
Yeah.
So a working class, kind of like labourer background guy from Sheffield, Threads, runs for PM on a socialist platform. And actually gets elected. And then the drama of it is the system that exists, the British electoral system, does not facilitate socialism.
No.
The way that it's set up, the elitist way that it's set up, the literal kind of like nouns and adjectives and all the way in the pomp and circumstance of the system, and also that there is a powerful controlling media, right-wing leaning media, that will do whatever they can to discredit and devalue. And it is just this really, really brilliant portrayal of a thing we almost saw happen in 2019 and in 2017. It's so well judged. It's so funny. It's very cleverly written. Ooh. This is very proto, kind of like the thick of it,
awesome.
More leaning towards drama than it is
comedy.
Full-on comedy. It's this great performance in the centre. It is smartly written. It understands politics. It is very much... It is defeatist, but it is defeatist because it knows that the system we live in will not allow the system to make itself better. Sure. Which is true. So you've got this... You know, there was that stuff about Corbyn will take us back to the 70s. It does that stuff. There is this huge strike that happens under him, where it's like this person who was supposed to be like one the workers... There's now been like this electricity shortage and like things are really, really bad and there's like more pay for power workers stuff. And it's because of stuff behind the scenes that has manipulated this to be a certain way, but it presents as, look, these socialists can't run the country. And it's so well done in that way. And they keep finding ways to get to them of like personal failings, like they tried with Corbyn and ultimately succeeded with Corbyn.
Sure,
they look for affairs and illicit things.
A slander campaign.
And it does end with this great thing of they do find a thing out about him that they think shows him to be dishonest, blah, 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 and to get him to stand down, etc., etc. And he just goes on the air and he goes, there's a thing ahead of me that is an auto cue and it's telling me to read the speech. I'm not going to read the speech. I'm going to say this instead. And it's so cool.
Awesome.
In terms of this like very candid. I think it's absolutely brilliant. You can watch it on Tubi. It is 165 minutes long and it is really, really worth watching.
I should actually watch that. That sounds something that I would very much enjoy. Yes, please.
And from there, we jump to Chattahoochee.
What does that poster look like?
Where is the Chattahoochee poster? It's the one with your boy Gary Oldman on it.
This one?
The second one.
Okay. That's
The
Mr.
Chattahoochee.
Oldman, is it? Okay.
Chattahoochee stars Gary Oldman, Dennis Hopper, Frances McDormand.
Wow. Stacked.
This is a TV movie. You can watch it on Tubi, your home of TV movies. Gary Oldman said of this film that he made it somewhat around that he which is kind of a lie because he did not make it around the same time as Sid and Nancy, but he sees them as being like early notable performances of his.
Gary Youngman,
and
if you will.
His quote was he thought that Chattahoochee was underrated and Sid and Nancy was overrated.
Okay.
I tested this hypothesis
did you
by
watch
watching
both?
Sid and Nancy straight afterwards. He's a liar.
Okay.
Sid and Nancy is really
Really
good. It's an excellent film, and Chattahoochee is okay. So Gary Oldman, you're a liar. Chattahoochee is the story of set in 1955, a Korean War veteran has a breakdown because of the stuff they've gone through and is put into a maximum security mental health prison where patients are routinely abused. And the story it takes is the true story of this person who pushed for reform in these facilities. So what is good about it is it engages in that a short film about killing, that Kieslowskian way of you can make the argument about bad people and that makes it stronger, of we should not treat people better because they're nice people. There are nasty people in this who've been put into this prison because it's an easier prison to put them into, which is the better point to make. So Dennis Hopper's character is nasty, and it makes it a bit too kind to him at points, but it shows that abuse of people is abuse and therefore needs to be stopped. It's a decent story, like told with like journeyman clarity.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's decent. The performances are fine. Frances McDormand isn't given enough to really play with. Yeah, you know what? It's fine.
Okay, so it sounds interesting. It sounds like it's a little better than Double Agent, but who knows? I don't know. Not that Double Agent's the
probably.
real title.
I mean, I don't have to rank these, thankfully.
Exactly. So that's my cross to bear. What's up next?
Now, L.A. Story.
Okay, that's a name I know.
Now, L.A. Story is a somewhat seen film, and some people that we know really like this film.
Okay.
And I kind of get why. It's kind of a bit diet shortcuts at points.
Yeah.
Very, very stripped down to like the single storyline. So LA is a character's movie, literally, because LA speaks through road signs in this film.
Wow, that's
so this
cool.
guy goes to this freeway billboard and it like tells him things. So there's this wacky weatherman at the centre, played by Steve Martin. It's a really good Steve Martin performance, unsurprisingly. He has like a background in literature and the like, and it's just being a wacky weatherman and kind of doesn't really like that. And he meets a lady that he is enamoured with, and it is just a story. It's very easy satire on isn't LA all vacuous and shouldn't we find some meaning in this meaningless life? But it's it's well done, good performances, really good kind of like dry comedy from Steve Martin. You've got Richard E. Grant in there. You got a Sarah Jessica Parker in there.
Okay, cool.
You got a Patrick Stewart in there.
Oh, come on, let's go.
You've got a Chevy Chase in there.
Okay,
but,
you take the good with the bad.
But there's some stuff. It's surprisingly funny. It goes for all the easiest targets, but it's not wrong in doing so.
Sure.
A tight 95 minutes. You'd put it on. You'd laugh a few times.
I'm throwing that into decent. That almost bear on. I Jack should watch that. That sounds like something I'd vibe with. But yeah, cool.
Next film, The Bodyguard.
Mick Jackson's biggest movie.
Yeah, so Whitney Houston, who's not very good in it, sorry, and Kevin Costner, who's not very good in it, sorry. I just don't think it's very good, I'll be honest. The Bodyguard has, a kick-ass song, and, there's a really good scene in it, actually. There's an absolutely incredible scene in this film.
Is it the
really,
end?
really good. No, they go to watch Yojimbo.
Oh, awesome. Hell yeah.
Because Yojimbo obviously translates to the bodyguard, so they go to watch Yojimbo for a bit.
Akira Kurosawa's The Bodyguard.
You just watch a little bit of Yojimbo. It's bland, drawn out. It's just not very good, and the characters like swear in it to give a bit of edge in a way that makes it seem like really ridiculous. To make it not the PG movie it obviously is. It's funny that there is a bit at an award show towards the end of it, because that's the closest it's going to get to the people involved being an award show. Though I'm sure it won for best song or something.
Probably.
It's just meh. It's just meh. It's not like abysmal. It's just a bit meh.
I'm going to put that in bad. It doesn't sound. You have not sold me on The Bodyguard, and based on this conversation and this conversation alone, it sounds bad.
And Kevin Costner, yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Clean Slate. Clean Slate.
Okay.
Clean Slate's Memento meets the game meets one of the games from Jackbox. I really like this movie.
That sounds awesome.
This is a Dana Carvey vehicle, and he's really, really funny in it.
Okay.
So the premise is Dana Carvey has lost his memory and can't form new memories.
Okay.
So he wakes up every morning having forgotten everything past a certain point.
Okay.
And before he goes to bed, he has to record a tape, and he plays himself the tape in the morning. It's Memento, but before Memento. But it's what if Memento was one of those SNL movies from the 90s?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I'm kind of sold already.
It's a private eye story. It's this kind of like spoof, just like Private Dick trying to get this thing solved. I think it's really quite funny, and the reason it's funny is because it's all an excuse to throw him in scenarios where he has to just roll with it. It's just okay, yes, anding. So there's a great scene, which is that Jackbox thing, which is him getting on stage at a convention. I forget which Jackbox it is, when someone picks the slides for you. You just have to make a speech up about it.
Oh, right, okay, that sounds.
And it's really, really funny.
I'm putting that in.
It's just a lot of that the whole way through. It's very, very charming. I think he's very, very funny in it. Some of it's really funny. Most of it's fine.
Cool.
Some of the jokes are as you'd expect.
Not
but
great.
most of them, damn good. Surprisingly, really liked it.
Good stuff. Putting that in decent, probably
It's
will check
decent.
that one out.
It is. It's decent. Next, we have Indictment, the McMartin trial. This one's heavy. It's quite long, but it is quite gripping. So this is a courtroom drama. It's about a very specific court case. It's a TV movie, as many of these are.
Yeah.
So, content warning for discussion of sexual abuse, specifically child sexual abuse. So a school and the family involved with it. So there was a family-led primary school, an infant school actually, where a student said they were sexually abused, and then all of the students claimed they were really, really extensively, repeatedly sexually abused by this family that helped to run this thing. And we follow James Woods, which is, already a bit of a knock against, because, James Woods is not a great guy.
Not a great guy.
Never mind. And his idea is, I'm going to be the defence for this case. I'm going to
on behalf of
represent the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's what's going to be.
Okay.
And I think it's really interesting. I do think it's good because it doesn't diminish abuse. This is not a story about crying wolf, but the facts of the case are pretty obvious because it goes through it, and it spoilers for the court case. There was not an abuse case here. There was an abuse. So one of the children was definitely abused, but by different people, and then part of that abuse is kind of like gaslighting them into externalizing like that. And it deals with the idea of that children will say what people want to hear, if they're getting a certain piece of feedback for this, and how people with really good intentions can emotionally abuse children in that way. So there is this person who does this kind of like puppet therapy on them to get to talk to puppets with lots of leading questions, and they admit to all these horrible things happening. And the court case builds to, of this is an authorised thing, but it should only ever be done when it's already been proved.
Yeah.
And when abuse has been proved, it's really important. When it's not being proved, it's really, really dangerous. And I don't want to get too much into this, but I think this film is quite important at the moment because there is a subsection of society that obviously we should all react emotively to child abuse. We all definitely should. There is a subsection where that emotive response is weaponized against them consistently. Of the moment you cite this is happening, and you know what I'm alluding to, I don't speak more than, of people who want to believe there are these kind of like deep system of child abuse as opposed to the real issues of the world, which do include that, but not in the way that they think. And it is all about how something can be so emotive that we want to believe that it is true, but how things are more complicated. And it does that without being diminishing and not being like an anti-victim narrative. The children here are victims. All of them are victims. And there are things here that are bad and that the family did not do very well. But it is a very good presentation of an important court case. It's fine filmmaking, whatever, but it's good.
It sounds relatively decent to me.
Yeah.
If you've sold me on that, I probably won't seek that one out, but it does sound decent.
No, I'm not saying you should watch it, but it's decent.
That's why you're here.
Next up, we have Volcano.
Hey, now
A
this
film
one
you've
goes.
heard of.
This one's probably going to go on. You should watch this because it's about a volcano.
Yeah. So Volcano is the film that I'd say is directly in between LA Story and Threads.
Awesome.
So you've got the quirkiness of LA Story, and then you've got the apocalyptic event, and you've got Tommy Lee Jones returning.
Oh, sold.
In the lead, you've also got Don Cheadle, you've got Keith David. Oh, you've got some people here, and of course John Carroll Lynch.
Cool.
I said I'd mention him. There he is. I want to like this movie. I really do want to like this movie. The idea of a volcano erupts in Los Angeles is such a fun premise for a movie.
Is it in LA?
The tar flats erupt, and there's like rivers of molten lava, and there's people who come out to try and stop lava, and it's ridiculous. It's filled with a lot of kind of like strange comedic scenes, and I kind of do want to like it.
Yeah.
But it's just not very good, and I think the main reason it's not very good is it's also, there are bits of it that are really misguided. It has a racial kind of like, it has like a Crash level.
Oh God, understanding of
racial politics thing.
Yeah, sure.
Where it kind of concludes that when we're all covered in volcanic ash, aren't we all the same?
Aren't we all dead? Everyone burns via lava the same.
Jack, no, it's you're thinking too innocently there.
Oh no!
If there was just white ash covering us all, don't we all look the same?
Oh, you're kidding.
Which it doesn't directly say that,
but it's saying that.
It's kind of directly says that because there's this like kid being like, everyone looks the same, and it's like that would solve racism. That stuff's really, really bad.
Yeah.
And the film isn't quite as fun as it should be and could be.
Okay.
Because it goes a bit kind of like realist, as opposed to a volcanoes erupt
in LA.
It deals with it surprisingly seriously, and then just cuts to weird jokes. It's a bit of a mess. Yeah.
It's like proto Roland Emmerich. I'm gonna put
yes,
bad.
Hugely. Yeah, I would say it's bad.
You've not sold me on that one,
unfortunately. We then have Tuesdays with Maury, which is a book that I'm familiar with and haven't read. Some of my old English teacher colleagues like this book a lot.
Oh, okay.
This opens with Oprah Winfrey telling you the book is great. And I think that's there to cover the fact that the film is shit and you would never want to read the book. So she's there to say this book's good, by the way. A sports journalist, whatever, dude is like
Jack Lemmon?
Middle-aged, white and sad.
Old Jack Lemmon?
And decides he should talk to his PE teacher, who apparently is the only person in his life that was of worth. Classic. So therefore visits him every Tuesday whilst this man is dying. He's dying of a degenerative disease, to just get some wisdom from him. It's just... I've made the manic pixie Oppenheimer Einstein joke a few times now, but it is that thing of, here is just this Clarence is wonderful life figure that is just there to just give you some wisdom as you live parasitically off it, to give this vacuous dude some meaning in the most bland, boring, completely dull ways for me. Meh.
Bad. Which is a shame, because if you tell me there's a Hank Azaria Jack Lemmon movie, I'm kind of all in, but that does not sound fun.
Yeah, you're telling me the star of 12 Angry Men, Jack Lemmon, is in the movie? I'm excited.
Oh, God, is he... Whose version of... Oh, is he in Friedkin's 12 Angry Men?
Yeah.
Of course, okay, yeah. Don't try and gaslight me into things now. Right, come on. What's next?
Says George C. Scott. Next is, the first 20 million is always the hardest.
Okay, that's a good name. And speaking from experience, it is the hardest, because I have not made mine yet.
It is, right. I mean, kind of like undoubtedly true.
Yeah, this is obvious. Water
It's
is
kind
wet.
of-
The
it's
motion
pretty
picture.
easy. Once you've got 20 million, it's easy to use that money to make investment to make a lot more money. Yes.
I knew that, Mick Jackson. Tell me
Like,
something I don't.
yeah.
know.
God, I want to like this film, but it's kind of like Big Bang Theory haha nerds stuff,
God.
really, which is a shame. You've got Rosario Dawson in this. You've got Ethan Suplee, who I quite like.
Jake Busey.
Yeah, you've got some people.
Oh, this one's
it's a
written by
weird
someone,
one.
isn't it?
This is this is written by Jon Favreau. And the people call themselves the Iron Men, and there's a point where they go, "We are Iron Men," which is it's pretty funny, to me at least. And it is very much, as Jack made a joke about this, not really knowing what the film was. You know that bit where Iron Man makes his suit in a cave and he does it. It's
Iron
kind of
Man.
like that. The movie.
Tony Stark built this using nothing but rocks. This kid, yeah.
Yeah. So there's an advertising exec, and you know what? They're plucky upstarts that we should be more like supportive of.
Not enough
and he's
films
doing
about
really
those.
well, but he wants more like meaning in his life, and he's working for this tech guy, which I agree with you, tech guys, and this tech guy is like blah 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 blah. I'm a genius. You should work with me, and he's like blah blah. I don't want to be in this big business anymore. Oh, it's been challenging. So he decides to go live in like a frat house somewhere with college students, which is like there's this brass band playing the whole time.
Hell yeah.
And he takes on this idea of, I'm going to make the $99 computer.
Oh.
And everyone's like, that can't be done. Can't be done. This is 2002. Probably can't be done. I mean, and you know, this is not a glamorous thing to do. And there's no real money here, but I'm doing it because that's the thing. Can he make the computer? No, he's just a marketing dude. So he gets a bunch of nerds from this dorm, whatever, and he makes them make the thing for him. There's something there. And in this movie, I should not be, it's ridiculous because it shouldn't really matter, but it's so ridiculous that it gets in its own way. So they are making this computer, which the stated aim is, we're making it so people in what it calls the third world can have access to things. One of the characters says, aren't there other things we should sort out first? Which the answer to that is, it's not an either or thing.
No.
Can work on that.
There's a priority.
This is actually important. We should actually make sure that technical access is available to all. So actually, it's actually very important. They invent like the most state of the art thing in the world.
A $99 computer.
They invent a holographic display where you wear this glove that you can just manipulate it around.
Like
they
Minority
make something
Report.
that we couldn't even make now.
Yeah.
And
For $99.
that's the $99 computer. Is a thing. Every time they take it to people, they're like, "Oh my god, this is so." I'm like, "What on earth?"
This would change
This idea that
everything.
doesn't-
This would change
It would
life
change
in
everything.
general. Like,
But they're like, "It's not got a screen or a mouse, so it's cheap." I'm like, "What on earth are you talking about?" And they
it's not
keep
down
pitching
to
it
just
around.
buying a monitor and a pair of speakers. That's not the cost-effective. Okay, fine.
It's absolutely
The
mad. And
research
it's got
and
these, like,
development cost
bespoke
14
animations.
billion, but the final product's $99.
It's 99. It's like that Project Natal Connect demonstration with Peter Molyneux. It's absolutely wild. And it's really skeezy because, like, the first thing they do this hologram is they make a hologram version of one of the girls they know to be like,
God.
basically have sex with me. And then later in the film, they realise that she's the fake internet girlfriend, that she does want them. And it's like, let's just legitimise that
God's
creepiness.
sake.
So it's full of that kind of stuff. And at least in the end, it does do the thing of, so they invent it, and the guy goes, "I'm taking the rights, and actually I'm selling it for $1,000 because of course I am."
$1,000.
Because it's just like, yeah, cool. And then they go, "Oh, actually, no, we're taking it away from you and doing our own one. We are actually going to sell it for $9." Like, well, what is this?
What is this movie? What's the ending of
bad.
this? Okay, I'm going to put that in bad.
I'm not going to say it's bad. You can say that.
Bad, verging on watchable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, 5 films
Next up,
to go.
the HBO movie Live from Baghdad.
Okay.
This is potentially quite reprehensible as a film.
No.
So it's about the Gulf War, and it's about 24-hour news coverage, and it's about the real heroes of the Gulf War, which was CNN providing coverage of the Gulf War. There is something very othering the whole way of where we're following quite a stacked cast here. You've got
Keaton.
David Suchet playing.
You're leading with David
Let's say-
Suchet.
What's to say that David Suchet is boldly playing against ethnicity in his role? And you've got Michael Keaton, you've got Helena Bonham Carter. You know, there's some people here. You've got John Carroll Lynch.
Of course,
we like him.
we do.
It's the true story of the coverage of they want to get interviews of people, blah blah blah, and then it's the bombing at the end, and they're there throughout it. And the triumph is they reported impartial news. They would not bow down to the state, but they still presented the news, etc., etc. And I see what you're thinking, Steve. That sounds fine. Whatever. The film released in 2002, and when you're just about to invade that part of the world again, this feels like it exists only to legitimize.
Almost like pre-propaganda, sort of soothing some egos and some thoughts before one of some terrible war crimes are committed.
It is a nostalgia piece for that last war to make you feel more okay about the upcoming war. Is generally how I feel about it.
That's
which
the
I
justification.
it's just kind of not very good. Whatever. It's a bunch of skeezy journalists. It reminds me of The Post in that way. I don't know The Post, where it's just like, this is not the story I care about here. It's like, oh, what are the Washington Post? I don't care about the Washington Post. Who gives a shit? Like, this actual story is much more important than, oh, I hope we can cover it well in our paper. Oh, fuck off. Yeah. I don't like it.
Okay, it's in bad. I'm putting it.
Maybe it's called Live from Baghdad. Who knows?
Live from Baghdad. Sure.
Yeah. Next up, we have Covert One: The Hades Factor, which is a TV series
This looks cool.
based on a book that's a Robert Ludlum book.
Okay.
It's 24 exploitation.
Okay.
It's the story of there's a virus that's going to kill the whole world, but it's not Mission Impossible 2, so therefore thumbs down from me already.
Yeah. Stephen Dorff.
That's
something.
Yeah, Jack is just not very good.
It doesn't look very good. There's four people on the cast list.
It's not very good. It's about shady America bad, but it's shady America bad in the way of, therefore we must have like better intervention and better Secret Service systems, and it's about Americans needing to intervene in the Middle East to save the day, and it comes out in 2006, which again follows up the previous thing where I'm like, I think the optics here are just bad. It doesn't fully go for, oh, there are horrible Islamic terrorists out there who want to destroy the world, because it turns out it was US manipulation, but the US manipulation relies on the fact that because these people in the Middle East are so easy to manipulate, and because they want to, it's utterly rough. Like, the optics are absolutely terrible, and then it's just tropey bottom level spy stuff. Yeah.
Does not sound good. You have unsold me on that
good.
motion picture. Hades, goodbye.
No one should watch it. Yeah.
Is it dross or is it bad?
So that's up to you. That's up to
I'm
you.
going to keep it in bad for now. Right, we've got 3 to go.
3 to go. These ones are interesting. So, The Memory Keeper's Daughter. What a wild movie. Content warnings for ableism for this one. So, this is a movie that stars Emily Watson. If only. She should be in it way more. It should star Emily Watson because she has the most interesting story in here. Now, a dreamy doctor knocks up a lady.
Okay.
And that lady has a child.
No way.
As often happens.
It's common.
So, child is born. It's a period piece. This is set in the 60s at the beginning, and then obviously the children grow up and it goes through their lives. Sorry, spoiler there. I said children. Oops. So, gives birth to a child. It's a beautiful bouncing boy, and she's a bit out of it. He's a doctor, so he's like helping to deliver it by himself. His nurse Emily Watson is there. She's clearly infatuated with him. You can tell that's going to come up later. And she's kind of like passing out, and then they're like, oh god, there's a second child here. And the child comes out, and he realizes the child is a girl that has Down syndrome.
Right.
So he, reflecting on his background where he had he had a sister that had a chronic condition that meant that she had to be cared for her very short life, and he saw that as like he's a bad human being. He saw that as like a real impediment. He didn't want that to happen again. So he hands the child to Emily Watson and says, "Take this to this institution. They'll raise it, and we'll never speak of this. We'll tell everyone that she died."
Oh my God.
And the film is the 20 years after that of this guy says that the child died, and at least we have our boy. And we just follow this dude through his life. His marriage breaks down a bit because, you know, he's not a great guy. He's a doctor, becomes like a photographer. The boy rebels in very teenage boy ways. And there's this parallel story in the background of Emily Watson takes the child to the institution, sees it and goes, "No, I can't have a child here. This is horrible." So raises the child as her own.
Good.
And there's this really beautiful, and with a guy that helps her out at that time, and that's the story that's worth telling.
Sure, I was going to say, I'm surprised that's not the focus here.
Genuinely, it's based on a book, and it's like, well, just don't base it on a book. Like, why are you adapting this terrible book? It's so hallmarky. It's like a Hallmark movie that thinks it's endearing.
I was on the wiki page, and there was a 2008 Lifetime TV adaptation of it as well.
It's so sinister. That is this, Jack. That is this.
Oh, I sorry. I thought there was another one. There was no mention of Mick Jackson.
No, this is the 2000. This is the. You'd think that would be the first thing. Yeah, it's just bad.
Okay, it's in the bad.
And it's kind of like, oh, this guy's a jerk, and then he goes to fix a sink and dies. That bit's really funny.
He goes to fix a sink and dies.
Their marriage breaks down, and he's like fixing their sink, and he has like a fit and dies, which shouldn't be funny, but it is because it's so ridiculous. And the ending of the movie, which kind of makes it a trashterpiece, but also like determines it as the absolute crap that it is then they're going through his stuff, and they find the letter that's just been like the letters from Emily Watson's life being like, "Oh my God, we had another child and you lied and said it died, but we had a funeral for this child. What the hell?" And then the kid brother says, "Wait a minute, you know that our dad used to always take pictures of young girls growing up? Like, did not know that. What a weird thing to do.
Father?
What a weird thing to do. Whoa, that's a messed up thing." And he goes, "You know, because he also took it to me growing up, and it's like he couldn't have her. So that was his way of loving her." And then he goes, "He also lost the daughter." I'm like, that is not the conclusion here. The conclusion is not
He
this.
is terrible, and he happened to have a career in photography. Get over it. Oh my God.
Where he just took random unsolicited photographs of growing up young girls. That's what was going on in this movie.
Yeah.
And they meet up with the child, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got a sister and I've got a brother," and yeah, it's wildly misguided. It's 90 minutes long, so you know,
watchable, which was the intent. So, you know, Lifetime.
You should actually watch this. 9 minutes.
It's going to the top category. No, I'm putting it down there. It's ruined our little staircase here now, but oh well, there we go.
Yeah.
We had a nice little
Temple Grandin.
Okay, what's this?
What do you know about Temple Grandin?
I've never heard of this before.
This is a biopic. Temple Grandin was a pioneer in humane livestock slaughtering and handling.
Oh. Okay.
She invented a more humane way of slaughtering cows. Her idea being, these cows are going to get killed anyway, so let's do it nicely.
Let's do the least suffering possible.
And she also makes the economic argument of this as well, of like its good business sense of we're not killing cows, because remember, we're just like not accidentally killing cows and losing cows. This is more humane, more economically viable, etc. She's a really, really awesome human being, and is very famous for being a notable autistic woman who invented this important thing.
Sure.
And it is her story. Now, there is always going to be a bit of casting here, but this is also a TV movie, and you do need to have a bit of a name in the role. So we've got Claire Danes playing Temple Grandin, and yes, it's a performance imitation stuff, so I'm not crazy about it, but she is good.
Sure.
It feels researched. I think it's written by somebody who has an autistic child.
Okay.
And the perspective is very much that. This is not a film for people with autism. This is a film for people who want to... This is an allyship film, which is a limitation, very much so. But it's quite a well-made, surprisingly, like, got some visual flair. It does a really good job of going, this person thinks differently, and that's why they're really interesting. And it really puts you into the way they think and makes you think about that. And it's a film of real empathy and understanding of, you may think people are weird, but have a think about stuff and what is normal kind of stuff. It's nice, it's good. There's an AJJ song about Temple Grandin, which is where I first
that makes sense.
Came across Temple Grandin. It's a very good song, actually. Yeah, it sounds... I was quite surprisingly taken with this.
Good for a Mick Jackson film. I'm saying it here on the podcast, on the video.
Good for a Mick Jackson film. Now,
the final
film, Denial.
Goodbye.
This is a really interesting film. This is moderately well seen. David Irving is a famous Holocaust denier.
Uh-oh. I don't like this.
And arguably a historian. You may remember David Irving from featuring on Michael Gove's bookshelf during the pandemic and kicking up a stir.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say the name.
So, so David Irving, Holocaust denier, a horrendous human being, renowned denier, it says here, which is true, unfortunately, was like a respected British historian and also Holocaust denier, and it very much goes being like, it's a freedom of speech thing. And basically, Deborah E. Lipstadt called him out as being like not a historian and just publishing lies. So he used the British system, which, as you know, is a lot more rigorous and the burden of proof lies a different way, to sue her and make her really prove that he was a false historian peddling mistruths, which is really hard to do. So you need to prove that, not that what he's saying is false, but that he thinks that it's false, which is difficult. And there's a point the movie makes of being like, well, we don't think what he's saying is correct, but why can't he say it? And what if he thinks he's correct? Then therefore he's not misleading anybody. And the film is very ardently against those things, and it's really well against them. You've got Rachel Weisz, you've got Tom Wilkinson, you've got Timothy Spall. It's a really good cast, and they're all very, very good in it. Timothy Spall is perhaps too good. And there's the argument of, he is such a good actor that he's always going to imbue humanity to characters.
To characters that do not deserve.
So there is that there, but then also we do need this put him in the spotlight performance, and I think in the end it proves itself to be worthwhile. And there is a resurgence in Nazi acceptism and Holocaust denial, and I think this film is a very good way of showing what freedom of speech means, and it very much makes the statement at the end of freedom of speech is challenging mistruth, is challenging absolute horrendous, horrible, destructive stuff. And what the film also does is it puts this man on stage and just shows you, here's some things that he said, and it's just outrageous of just this open racism, misogyny, and anti-Semitism, obviously. And I mean these things as separate points here because he does all of the above. And it's just playing him back clips of him saying some horrible things and being like, I don't see the issue here. That's not racist. God. And you're just like, oh my God. So it is quite powerful in showing that stuff. It's a little bit, maybe, is it the way to tell the story?
Sure.
It's a bit weird because Rachel Weisz's character, Deborah Lipstadt, isn't able to make the case herself, so she's kind of there in the background, yet we follow her. We should really follow Tom Wilkinson, who's very, very good as the lawyer, he does a very good job of you thinking. So there's a good scene where he goes to Auschwitz, and he is accused of not taking it seriously enough because he's like asking questions being like, well, why haven't we been like really looking into this and making sure there's a burden of like historical proof here? And I was like, I can't believe that you are not being moved by this. And then later they go, oh, it's because you know what this means and you know what you're coming up against and you are preparing a case and you know how important this is. So there is the need to just present cold, hard facts of, we can't get caught up in the emotive and think that's going to convince everybody, because it won't, of actually having the facts go back to it. And it's a really good show of how the legal system can work, but also this shouldn't have been allowed to be the
case in the first place.
It's good stuff.
And
there's some really good stuff in it about how they want to use, he clearly thinks this is his time in the sun to be heard, and there are some victims of the Holocaust who are like, well, this is our time to make us say against him. And Andrew Scott, the lawyer's like, no, you can't do that. You cannot put a Holocaust denier on the stage against him because that is abuse. It's just like, you cannot have him do his thing to a Holocaust victim.
No, not at all.
Because you are just, and it it really deals with the legal system in an interesting way of its problems, but also what it can be used for. It's not an excellent film. Doesn't needs to exist, but it's pretty good actually.
I'm putting it in decent. That sounds quite good for.
Yeah.
Great for a Mick Jackson.
I'm not saying you should actually watch it.
No, either am I. I'm saying there's 3 films that you should actually watch, but
yeah,
that's it, Stephen. Then that is Mick Jackson in a nutshell. Do you feel better for having it ticked off every single box on Mick Jackson's letterbox page?
Yeah, I think so. Do
you feel
someone had to?
It was constructive. You've learnt lots about yourself, the world, Mick Jackson.
Yeah.
How to pick up girls.
Yeah. Found the connections, followed the thread. I think it was worthwhile.
It's a decent filmography that only one man was really prepared to go through in its entirety. But he did it.
This tier list now exists on tiermaker.com.
Exactly.
You could do your own.
You could do your own. So please follow along at home. Let us know what you think about The Ascent of Man or Double Agent or The Hades Factor. Maybe The Hades Factor is actually an underseen gem, and maybe Stephen got it wrong. Thank you very much for watching / listening to this episode of The Stacks. You can help us and support the show by going to patreon.com /The Stacks on Film for more of these little tier ranking videos for maybe, I don't know, some more popular directors per se. But yeah, you can email us at thestacksonfilm@gmail.com. You can find us on Discord. You can find us on Letterboxd. All the links are in the description. Stephen, any closing remarks about Mick Jackson?
We're sorry, Mick Jackson. These are your films.
Oh, no. Oh, I regret asking you that. Okay. And as always, Mick Jackson heads, don't let the shivers beast
you actually should watch this get you.
Thread you.
Don't let it thread you. Follow the threads.
Good night. God bless, and follow the threads.
Follow the threads. They're collecting sign-ups.